I think it's a question I will be the first on radio, at least, to ask it. But before I ask it, I want to look at this here with you. Over at Right Scoop, our buddy Brian has a list of all the crimes committed by the domestic terrorist. I'm not talking about Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn. I'm not talking about the FALN. They got all the pardons from Clinton and so on. No, I'm talking about this guy. And boy, I'll tell you what. He committed a felony in 1991, domestic violence in 1994, numerous parking violations, another felony in 2004. This guy, he was in drug court, more parking violations. He had a foreclosure. Let's see, a criminal traffic violation, another traffic, on and on. Another third-degree felony, another parking violation, misdemeanor. As recently as 24. How's this guy not in prison? He's committed multiple felonies. But here's a bigger question for you, ladies and gentlemen. And this was sent to me by a buddy of mine. The New York Times and other news outlets keep referring to this guy as a registered Republican, right? But he's previously been convicted of felonies, according to their same story and these other stories. So he should have been removed from the voter registration list because he lost his right to vote in Florida. You know, the Democrats in the blue states and the blue cities, they keep pushing for the rights of felons to vote. After they've served their time, you've heard it over and over again. You heard Gillum mention it in one of the debates. Some are even pushing for the right of felons to vote while they're in prison. But let's talk about the facts here. It's Florida. He should have been removed from the voter registration list because he lost his right to vote. And it could not be restored until and unless he applied to the Florida Clemency Board and was approved. Florida is one of the states that does not automatically restore the right of felons to vote when they get out of prison. Even though it soon might, by the way, because the left put a referendum on the upcoming November ballot, irony of ironies, to do exactly that. So unless he had his right to vote restored, he can't be a registered Republican, quote unquote. So I would ask the news media out there, the New York Slimes, the Constipated News Network, MSLSD, all of you. How did he become a registered Republican when that was supposed to be stripped off the rolls? Now, once again, you don't automatically restore the right of felons to vote when they get out of prison in Florida, even though the left has a ballot measure right now for this election to do exactly that. So this nut job would have had his right to vote restored if that passed. He's a registered Republican. How did he become, or how did he stay a registered Republican given the multiple felonies? How? It can't be restored unless and until he applied to the Florida Clemency Board, and unless it was approved. Is that what happened? Are there any media outlets that want to check it out? I'm curious. And by the way, I want to thank fabulous law enforcement, local, state, and federal. Fabulous law enforcement, the men and women of local law enforcement, the men and women of state law enforcement, the men and women of federal law enforcement. I'm not talking about the Comey types. You know what I mean. I'm talking about the men and women of local, state, federal law enforcement that the left trashes every damn day. That the left attacks as racist, as bigoted, every day. And yet here we had Democrats targeted and local, state, and federal law enforcement people were fabulous. They moved quickly. They moved effectively. And they tracked this guy down, what, in 48 hours or so, give or take? But don't worry, in another week or two, they'll be trashing law enforcement like they always do. Like they always do. Now, what of this criminal justice reform stuff? Criminal justice reform, they call this. How the hell did this guy get out of prison? He's got a criminal record, not as long as his right arm, as long as his left and his right arm. Misdemeanors, felonies. How did he get out? And this is before criminal justice reform. We spend way too much time worrying about convicted felons or people who plead to felonies and not enough time worried about victims of crimes. We've spent way too much time worried about illegal aliens rather than American citizens. We spend way too much time worried about illegal alien children, dreamers, rather than American citizen children. We allowed to talk about these things? I insist on talking about these things. Now, the president has correctly pointed out, I know he's an avid listener to this program, and I greatly appreciate it, that the media really have led the way with the rhetoric, with the references to Hitler, with the references to racism, anyone they disagree with on the left, and that includes the media, of course. That's how they frame the issues. Dictators. And there have been a number of very smart articles written today and yesterday pointing out, hey, look, political rhetoric, even bad political rhetoric, doesn't justify, doesn't explain what a nut job like this does and did. It simply does not. I just gave you a laundry list of the crimes that he committed up until and through 2014. Donald Trump wasn't even running for president up until and through 2014. He committed multiple felonies by then. Multiple felonies. He was already radicalized. He didn't need Donald Trump or anybody else to push him over the edge. He was already over the edge. He started committing crimes, at least from the public record, since 1991, all the way through 2014. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Nothing whatsoever. But the left, the media, the Democrats, they have a quote-unquote registered Republican. And Donald Trump, and he's driving around with Trump and Pence on his pictures of them and their names on his van. So they make this connection. There is no connection. There's no connection whatsoever. The media trashing law enforcement. The Democrats trashing law enforcement. The left trashing law enforcement. And now, I think we can see why we need law enforcement. Excusing Antifa, excusing Black Lives Matter, ignoring Obama's relationship with actual domestic terrorists, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, among others. President Trump has no relationship and never did with actual domestic terrorists, underground student terrorists, who are actually involved in bombings. None. Donald Trump has not pardoned terrorist members of the FALN, the Puerto Rican separatist organization. You can lay that on Clinton and Obama. Trump never did that. Trump never even suggested that. Trump has been supporting law enforcement, the same law enforcement that just tracked down this nut job. That law enforcement. But I ask the question again, maybe he is a registered Republican, this nut job. But how did he become a registered Republican? How did he not lose his right to vote? He's not even supposed to be on the voting list. Or maybe there was an effort to remove him from the voting list, but some left-wing group said it was voter suppression. I don't know. I'd like to know. We got a real mix of things here that's very fascinating to me. I'll be right back. Andrew Gillum, the Democrat running for governor of Florida. Here's what he had to say about the cops Wednesday on a podcast. Hat tip free beacon. Listen to this, Florida. Listen to this, America. Cut 13, go.
I've got to let them know. Anti-police? No. I'm for police accountability. But look, law enforcement society cannot work. And quite frankly, law enforcement can't do its job if it does not have a trusting relationship with the community. At the time that a law enforcement official has to go to a weapon, to a gun, to a baton, to a taser, then they have already have to go too far. By their very presence, by the very trust that they inspire in community and in society, they're supposed to be able to bring most situations to heel.
Now, this is sick, and this man is sick from a philosophical, ideological perspective. He's a radical. He is sick from a philosophical and political perspective. He knows this not to be true. You have criminals in society, including in poor neighborhoods, who cannot be reasoned with. Rapists, murderers, would-be rapists, would-be murderers, robbers, would-be robbers, and so forth and so on. At the time that a law enforcement official has to go to a weapon, to a gun, to a baton, to a taser, then they have already gone too far by their very presence, by the very trust that they inspire in community and in society. They are supposed to be able to bring most situations to heel. You hear this? It's incredible. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz has no problem with this. She thinks he's great. Because at a news conference today, in support of Andrew Gillum, here's what she had to say. Cut 12, go.
I just want to share with you how heartbroken I was to have my incredible staff, who are taking care of the people I represent every single day, have to deal with that kind of danger and deal with that kind of horror while serving my constituents. And so we're going to make sure. It's one of the reasons that we have to elect Andrew Gillum governor.
That's right.
Because we need a governor that is going to make sure that we stand up, that we can stand up for the values of this community.
And the values of the community is to trash the cops, even in the face of this. That's a press conference today. And I want Debbie Wasserman Schultz to know that she's a victim, that her staff, victims. But so is Donald Trump Jr. a victim. And so is Eric Trump a victim. And so is Donald Trump a victim. And so is Laura Trump a victim. And so is Marco Rubio a victim. And so is Susan Collins a victim. And so is General Mattis a victim. And I just don't remember all the outpouring of anguish by the media. I just don't remember it. Day in and day out. Now, this isn't about moral relativism or anything of the sort. This is about absolute, bold-faced, blatant hypocrisy. And Steve Scalise was actually shot and almost murdered, as others were shot. Luckily, this kook either didn't know what he was doing or didn't intend for these bombs to go off. Either way, he's a terrorist. And the New York Times tells us he's a registered Republican. I'm trying to figure out how that can be. I'm not saying he's not. I just want to know more. Because once you're a felon in Florida, you're not automatically returned to the voting list. You're not allowed to vote unless you go specifically to the Florida Clemency Board. Did he do that? Did he get approval? I mean, this guy in 2002, he made a bomb threat. He made a bomb threat in 2002. He's not a clean slate. The way he was, or the perpetrator before he was caught was portrayed, the insinuation from Schumer and Pelosi, the insinuation from CNN and MSNBC, was there was a direct line between Trump and his rhetoric and whoever was doing this. That was the insinuation, that it pushed him over the edge, and that this is what causes this sort of... No, it doesn't. The guy has multiple felonies in his past. The guy threatened to use a bomb in 2002. That's pretty long before Donald Trump even flirted with the idea of running for president of the United States. He was arrested in 2002, according to the Associated Press, on charges of threatening to throw, place, project, or discharge any destructive device. And as pointed out in the Washington Examiner, he made the bomb threat because he was angry at a Florida utility worker. Sane people do not make these threats and commit these other felonies. And I suppose would-be Governor Andrew Gillum, may I call you Andrew, sir? Andrew Gillum would say, well, the police shouldn't pull out guns or tasers or billy clubs or anything of the sort. No, no, no. They should figure out how to make the guy heal. We need more, community relations. More community relations. I'll tell you what. I'd like to know a hell of a lot more about this situation. I really would. Not from a conspiracy perspective or anything else. I just want to know more of the facts. And I'm sure now that the New York Slimes, the Washington Compost, the Constipated News Network, MSLSD, and all the rest of them are working feverishly to figure out how he became a registered Republican or retain that. And I think the New York Times is obligated, since it was the first to report it, to tell us how. Was it because Florida is not allowed to clear up its voter rolls because of all the left-wingers suing? Is it because people on the Florida Clemency Board gave him his registration? What exactly? And are we going to rethink this idea that felons should be able to vote? I'll be right back. Well, Mr. Producer, my call screen is down. Why don't you give me a hand and tell me, number one, if we have a lib, and number two, if not, if we have a regular American. Mike in Maryland, the great WMAL. Go.
Hey, Mark, great talking to you. First-time caller.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, on the war of rhetoric that's going on, one thing I noticed that it seems to have pushed some people's buttons and may have pushed this guy's button was that, it's the first time where supporters of a particular candidate have been directly attacked and attacked regularly for a long term. And that's insulting to people when they pick a side and then they're attacked for the side they pick. And that's my point. Is they're going back and forth that it's the rhetoric between what Donald Trump said and what the media and the Democrats say. It's who it's directed to. I don't ever remember Donald Trump doing something to the supporters of the Democrats the way that the Democrats.
I think you're giving this nut way too much credit, sir. In 2002, he threatened to bomb a public utility because he was angry with a worker. So I'd be very, very careful about playing into the left's hands that this is some guy who's angry about what the left is doing and so forth and so on. We're all angry about what the left is doing, but we don't send real or fake bombs to a bunch of people.
No, I don't, and I don't support that at all. It's more the case of, you're asking, well, why do we push people's buttons? Why go there anyway? Why ever attack supporters? That doesn't seem the right way to do things in the way that we're set up.
Well, the media like to do this. They attack all the time because, you see, Mr. Zucker over at CNN and the clown that runs MSLSD, they've decided that they are political operations and that they want to they want to play to a base, the radical left kook Democrat base, and that's what they've decided to do. They're not really news operations. They know damn well that Don Lemon is a joke. They know damn well that Jake Tapper more and more has become a joke. Look what they run at night. Stephen Colbert, the Spock of with the goofy ears. May I? Yes, I will. The Spock of late night comedy. It's not even comedy. It's stupid. And look at Kimmel and Bits, another moron. And by the way, several of these people, including Kimmel and Bits and others, have done blackface shticks, if you'll call it that, in the past. How come they're not fired? Like Megyn Kelly's fired. How come they're not fired? How come Joy Reid hasn't been fired from MSLSD, given everything that she posted? I mean, seems a little odd to me. Thank you for your call, sir. Seems a lot odd to me. We have about 16,000 murders a year in this country. And I might be off somewhat, but that's my recollection. That's a lot of murders. Who knows why somebody kills another person? Tens of thousands of rapes. Sick. Armed burglaries and so forth. Are we actually to believe that the political rhetoric causes these things? I mean, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, this guy has a long crime record, including threatening to use a bomb in 2002, multiple felonies. And we get played all the time by the media. Really, by the left, more generally. Played all the time. Well, if the president we keep down his red has nothing to do with the president. And as I pointed out in exquisite detail for the last 48 hours, it's the president who's called Hitler. It's the president who's called a Nazi. It's his supporters, us, who are called neo-Nazis and racists. It's the president who's called a racist. And he's called a racist and a Nazi on MSNBC, on CNN, by the late-night hosts, which is really, truly appalling. Absolutely appalling. And then they tell, we got to tone down here. Tone down. Immediately out of the box, Zucker, who's responsible for CNN, puts out a statement without knowing anything, blaming Trump. Jake Tapper is such a fool, he goes on the air, like John Harris, I think that's his name. They go on the air and say, well, Trump says stop blaming him. Who's blaming him? What do you mean who's blaming him? All of you idiots are blaming him. Your network, MSLSD? Some idiot writing a column in the Washington Post. Oh, Dana Milbank. Talk about a lowlife. Look at this Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. This is a clown act. This is Barnum and Bailey. They're the center ring. They should be balancing balls on their nose, especially him with that bulbous nose of his. They should be doing the whole clown car stuff. Oh, but Trump, you see, inspired this guy. This guy was committing felonies before Trump even thought about running for anything. Grotesque. One of the things we do here is we are recording history. So when I tell you certain of these news outlets or leftists say what they say, that's one thing. But when you hear it from their mouths, it's quite another. And it's quite shocking. Many of these people are supposed to be straight news reporters. You cannot tell so frequently a straight news reporter from a commentator. I'm going to give you an example. Jen Palmieri is a despicable former communications director under Barack Obama. She is a radical, extreme hack. And she's on MSNBC today. And here's what she says. Cut 9, go.
It was either President Bush or President Obama who had been leading at this moment. They would have called Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the other, reached out to CNN to express concern for their safety. And if you'd seen one of those presidents speak about this today, and that it had been clear that the suspect was motivated by political rantings from this president.
See that? See that? Motivated by political rantings from this president, as is pretty clear. Absolutely sick. And the shooter, you see, at the baseball field that actually almost killed Steve Scalise and actually shot other people, she would never say he was motivated by the political rantings of Bernie Sanders about such an unjust society, how the Republicans are blocking health care for all, and on and on. She would never say that. Because she is diabolical. Go ahead.
You saw on that van, you saw CNN sucks, you saw a lot of right-wing propaganda on the suspect. That's
right-wing propaganda, if you think CNN sucks? right-wing propaganda. You see what they think of you? They just keep at it day in and day out. Go ahead.
Be incumbent on this president to say something unifying, but also a message.
He said something unifying, and he was immediately mocked by your ilk. You haven't given this guy a break since the day he announced his presidency, to run for president. You haven't given him a break at all. You've been mocking him, trying to humiliate him, trying to smear him, going after his taxes, going after his wives, ex-wives, his wife, going after his kids, going after his businesses, digging up whatever the hell you can. You never treated Obama this way. And you won't treat any Democrat this way. Go ahead.
Side of the political politics to say that we got to tone it down, we got to come together. And
here she is, a bleeding heart left-wing hack, spewing, burping up her poison, talking about we have to tone it down. It's just incredible. Now, I'm not going to keep playing that because it's like waterboarding. I'm not going to do that to you at dinner time. But now here's Dana Bash. She's supposed to be a reporter, right? On CNN today. Cut 10, go.
There's teleprompter Trump and there's Twitter Trump. And that was teleprompter Trump. Something that was written very carefully, very well by his...
And by the way, there's teleprompter Dana Bash and there's non-teleprompter Dana Bash. Go ahead.
And, presumably him too, doing what he should do, as you said, as president, talking about these despicable acts, that violence is never okay. The problem is what he didn't say, either in that teleprompter speech or on Twitter, which is, you know what? We all need to lower the rhetoric.
Excuse me, he said that. But what you didn't like is he also told you to lower it. Bunch of narcissists. Go ahead.
Because I, as president, have a big impact on people in what I say, just as the media have an impact, just as everybody else has an impact.
Bernie Sanders has an impact, just as the nut job in Utah who sent the ricin packages and others. When Democrats speak, they have an impact. When the media speak, they have an impact. Nothing that Donald Trump said resulted in ricin being sent to Susan Collins or General Mattis or the head of our Navy or to his kids or to Trump himself. Right? Who's responsible for that? Maxine Waters? Who? Seriously? Chuck Schumer? Adam Schiff? Who's responsible for that? Dana Bash? Go ahead.
The man with the loudest megaphone and the most Twitter followers in politics. And so that was a big omission.
Now, this is a reporter, ladies and gentlemen, who is giving her opinion endlessly. And that's part of the problem in this country. There are people who give opinions, people like me, like Sean, like Rush, like Carlson, like Ingram, and go down the list. And there are people who are supposed to be straight news people. Not interpreting the news, not giving their opinion on the news, not questioning, just give the news. Does that sound like Dana Bash? She sounds like Jen Palmieri, a mouthpiece for Barack Milhouse Benito Obama. Go ahead.
We have not seen him fill in that blank, and if anything, as you mentioned, he's gone the other way on Twitter.
Go ahead.
To continue to stoke animosity towards the media.
He's not stoking animosity towards the media. You keep using this phrase. All of you bubbleheads do. You're stoking animosity towards the media because you're dishonest. You're intellectually dishonest. You know you're a liberal, Dana Bash. You know John Harris, your former husband. You know he's a liberal. You know Don Lemon is a radical kook. You know it. You know Jeff Zucker's a liberal who hates Trump. All of you on that phony network know who you are. You know what you're doing. And then you have these comments to make. Wow, there's animosity toward us. Of course he has animosity toward you, as do millions of other people. And we think for ourselves. It's not like the president snaps his fingers and all of a sudden, hey, sick him over at CNN. That's not it. I play your moronic statements. 8.5 million people on terrestrial radio hear you. Another 5 million people hear you on my podcast. We hear you. We know what you're saying. We are thinking smart American people, not what you think we are. Robert, Garland, Texas, the great WBAP, a liberal. Go.
Hello, Mark. I will listen to your show often. I don't agree with you almost ever, but I have up until now respected you greatly because I think that everything you have said has been sincere.
Oh, okay.
Today, you have been so disingenuous.
All right, sir, don't psychoanalyze me. Go ahead and make your point. You don't know me. You know nothing about me. I don't know you. Just make your point.
My point is that you are trying to say that others in America, whether they're senators or whatever, have the same amount of weight in what they say as the President of the United States. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I didn't say that, but I will say the President of the United States has said nothing that would trigger somebody to do something like this. Nothing.
Now, come on. At his rallies, he has literally called and said, I wish it was the time where we could just punch people in the face.
Yeah, he mentioned once punching. But let me ask you a question, sir. Do you know who Oscar Lopez Rivera is?
Yeah.
And let me ask you a question. I want to have a discussion with you if you allow it. Do you know who Oscar Lopez Rivera is? I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you know who Oscar Lopez Rivera is? It's not a trick. Yes or no?
Yes.
Who is he?
But that is not what we're talking about.
Who is he?
We're talking about president.
Who is he?
Do you know who Donald Trump is?
Get him off the air. He's a liar. He was the head of the FALN bombers in this country that resulted in the death of a police officer, 2 police officers, and several bombings. And Barack Obama commuted his sentence. And all the rest of them that were involved in that gang, Bill Clinton pardoned them. Now, you want to talk about presidential responsibility? Let's talk about presidential responsibility. Barack Obama, best buddies with Ayers, another bomber. Bernardine Dorn, another bomber. Commutes the sentence of Oscar Lopez Rivera, who never backed off what he did. Even Clinton wouldn't commute his sentence, while commuting all the others. I don't need lectures from you people on the left, and neither does the President of the United States. You are full of it. The President said punch somebody in the face. These guys were bombing the country. Civilians, police officers. And you elected Obama president. And you re-elected Clinton president. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. And I have to listen to the moral outrage of the left, the moral outrage of the media. It's preposterous. It's disgusting. It's like this Khashoggi matter. You have this Iran that slaughters journalists left and right, slaughters gay people left and right, slaughters Christians left and right. The second highest execution rate in the world behind China. Obama facilitates a deal in which he gives them $150 billion and $1.5 billion in the cover of darkness with foreign currency. They killed American soldiers. And suddenly the left is upset with Trump's rhetoric. They're not upset with their own rhetoric. I never get a caller here from the left complaining about Antifa. It is a violent left-wing militia group, a Marxist militia group. And we had individuals on CNN like Don Lemon, people on MSNBC, who downplayed their violence. They train. They come armed. Excuses are made for them. But Trump's rhetoric, you see, is what's pushing the country over the edge. One of the biggest animals in human history is Adolf Hitler. They call him Hitler. They call American citizens who voted for him Nazis, racists. But it's Trump, you see. If the left and the Democrats and the media had accepted the results of this last election in 2016, criticize the president, of course, but try to destroy him, come up with Russian conspiracy theories, act like they're the National Enquirer with every allegation, try and force him from office, talk about his mental illness, and on and on and on. If they accepted his legitimacy as president and criticized his policies or what he was saying, that's one thing. But that's not what's going on in this country. That's not what's going on in this country. And we all know it. So don't call your little whiny ass to me and say, yes, but Trump said that. You had no idea who Oscar Lopez Rivera was. None. And you don't give a damn. You didn't care about Bill Ayers. You didn't care about Bernadine Dorn. Khalidi, another one. You don't care about any of them. Incredible. Really. Incredible, really. And what exactly has Trump said that would cause somebody to try and blow up 12 other people or threaten 12 other people? What has he said? He said punch somebody in the face. Oh, so when Obama said get in the face, when Holder said kick them when they're down, and I can go on and on and on. Did that spark some Republican? No. When Bernie Sanders goes on and on about how horrible America, about how unjust it is, how people are discriminated against, how racist we are, on and on and on. What kind of support does that build for a society? Or does it cause some nut to go to a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia with a sniper rifle and start shooting Republicans with a list in his pocket? We don't need any lectures from you leftists, that's for sure. Or you clowns in the media. I'll be right back. Jimmy, Brooklyn, New York, the great WABC. Go.
You mentioned a little while ago Oscar Lopez Rivera. Now, this was a communist terrorist who blew up bombs and murdered Americans. And then Obama let him out of prison early after serving 35 years for killing Americans. Well, Oscar Lopez Rivera yesterday spoke at Hofstra University. So you see, the communist terrorists in the 1960s and 70s that were blowing up buildings, killing Americans, trying to make communist revolution, they became professors. And they've been brainwashing and indoctrinating and organizing our kids, our students, who are now congressmen and senators. And this group out there now, Antifa, this Marxist revolutionary group, they will be the next wave of hardline Marxist professors. They're raping our students' minds. They're committing ideological terrorism. They're planned, they're trained, they know what they're doing, they're making great salaries. They're getting paid to destroy us. We need to enforce something like separation of Marx and state. We should not be funding people who are working to destroy us. It's not an accident that we see all this kind of violence in the streets. And now some kook who appears to be a right-wing guy, if this is all true, the whole media is blaming this on the conservatives when the violence from the left. I remember the protests during the Vietnam War. I remember the so-called anti-war people out there with the communist flags. And I saw the signs, Vietnam Veterans Against the War. That was John Kerry's group. So it wasn't just anti-war, they were anti-American. Well, those people have been indoctrinating our students forever. The media was on the enemy's side during the Cold War. So the idea that they're fake news, it's actually worse than that for maybe 90% of the media. And I've been trying to get this story out about Oscar Lopez Rivera. I gave it to so many people, I don't want to embarrass them, even in the media, and nobody touched the story.
Well, now, you just gave it to millions. Yep.
Well, that's good. Now, there's another enemy agent coming up to speak in New York, Angela Davis. She's a high-level Communist Party official. She's a fanatical Castro supporter. She supports terror, communist revolution, and she ran for vice president on the American Communist Party ticket. She's coming to New York University November 5th, Monday. And I'm getting this from a Marxist newspaper called The Independent. They spell it INDEPENDENT. D-Y-P-E-N-D-E-N-T, The Independent.
Clever.
Now, wait, I got to tell you more. This paper was put out by a group who did a fundraiser for Lynn Stewart, the communist attorney that defended terrorists.
Right.
This paper works with Muslims in mosques and Muslim neighborhoods, trying to work with them, convince them to quit cooperating with the police and the FBI. This group celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Soviet Revolution, and this year they celebrated the 200th birthday of Karl Marx. So they're colluding with Russia, they're colluding with all America's enemies, and they're having enormous influences on their colleges and everything, and they're blaming all the trouble on the people who oppose them.
Now, you have to wonder why the media, that claims to be so anti-Russian, why they don't pay attention to any of this, because you're right, this is real collusion, it's taking place in our schools and universities and in these public forums. All right, Jimmy, I appreciate your call, buddy. Craig, Hamilton, New Jersey, the great WABC. Go.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I was speaking to someone I work with who hates Trump, and we were talking about the situation with the bombing attacks, and I said to him, what about Steve Scalise? And he was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Well, let's slow down. There's been no bombing attack. There have been packages with these devices in them, none of which have gone off. That doesn't make it a good thing. It's still acts of terrorism. The people who have been shot and almost killed were on that baseball field. Go ahead.
I apologize. I didn't.
You don't need to apologize. I just want to get the facts straight.
Okay. So he said, well, we can't compare Bernie Sanders to the President of the United States, carries much greater weight being the president. So I said to him, well, what about the assassination of the 5 policemen in Dallas following the anti-police remarks by President Obama and Eric Holder? And tragically, he didn't even remember this until I pulled it up on the Internet.
Well, sir, you've just said something you're not even allowed to say. While Trump is blamed, and I told you 2 days ago, you could see it coming. They're starting to aim at Trump, trying to turn the story into Trump. That's perfectly fine. They can say whatever they want about Trump. It's just fire away. But if you bring up the fact that Obama was truly trashing cops and law enforcement, and Holder was too, and they're nationalizing these local police departments and some of the really reckless things that they said, whether it was Ferguson or Baltimore, both towns, by the way, which have not recovered from what took place, you're not allowed to say that stuff. You're not allowed to say that stuff. And yet the fact is their rhetoric was outrageous. Again, I don't consider it being the reason that these cops were murdered. The guy was an absolute nut and so forth and so on. But the media will never be consistent because the media are of Obama's ilk. They are progressive ideologues. They are statists. That's who they are. And they reject the election of Donald Trump. That's why they hate him so much. All right, Craig, thanks for your call. Hamilton, New Jersey, I know where it is. It's a very, very nice town, as a matter of fact. I want to salute the armed forces tonight and all law enforcement. Thank you for what you've done this week and what you do every single day and night. And I want to say goodnight to my father, who won't be calling me tonight like he did most Friday nights and most nights after our radio show. I miss you, Pops. I'll see you all on Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern on Life, Liberty, and Levin. Have a wonderful weekend.